The fluorescent light hums, a sterile buzz against the frantic thumping in my chest. It's late. The office is quiet, just the ghost of coffee and ozone lingering in the air. My fingers trace the edges of the signed contract, the crisp paper cool against my skin. It feels impossibly heavy, a feather that weighs more than stone. Outside, the city lights bleed against the glass, a million tiny fires burning in the dark. Inside this room, I feel a cold, quiet fire ignite within me, a slow burn I've carried for years. It's done. It's really done. The name of the company, bold and official, stares back at me from the page. His largest client, acquired by me. I lift my eyes to the darkened window, seeing my own reflection superimposed over the glittering void outside. The woman in the glass looks different tonight. Older, maybe. Colder, definitely. But there's a flicker there too, sharp and unwavering. This wasn't about money. Not really. This was about a debt repaid, a prophecy reversed. He said I couldn't survive without him. Said it with that easy smile, that dismissive wave of the hand, like swatting away a fly. Well, the fly just brought down the house. The silence stretches, vast and deep, filled only by the echo of those words and the rustle of the paper. The air crackles with an energy I've never felt before, a chilling calm that settles after a storm. It's time. Time to go home and deliver the news. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It started slowly, subtly, like poison in the well. A drip here, a drop there. Small comments masked as concern. Are you sure you should spend money on that, darling? It's a bit frivolous, isn't it? Or, after I'd mentioned a creative project I was excited about, a patronizing laugh. Oh, that's sweet, honey. A little hobby for you. Keeps you busy, I suppose. My husband, Mark. Charming to the world, charismatic in a boardroom. The picture of success. At home, a different story unfolded behind closed doors. He was the sun, and I was a planet, expected to orbit, reflecting his light but generating none of my own. Our life looked perfect on the surface. A beautiful house in the suburbs, expensive cars, exotic vacations posted on social media, curated down to the filter. Friends envied me. You're so lucky, they'd say. Mark provides so well for you. You don't have to worry about a thing, and I wouldn't disagree out loud. Because acknowledging the gilded cage felt like complaining about a five-star prison. Who was I to moan when others struggled just to pay rent? I had comfort, security. I had everything except independence. Everything except my own footing in the world. Mark cultivated this dependency carefully. He handled all the finances, the bills, the investments. He didn't forbid me from working, not explicitly, but he'd subtly undermine any ambition I showed. If I talked about getting a job, he'd say, "Why would you want to do that? You'd be bored. Besides, I make enough. You should enjoy your life, enjoy my life," which apparently meant decorating the house, planning dinner parties, and being a decorative accessory on his arm. It was a slow erosion of my self-worth, a constant whisper that my value lay in my stillness, my compliance, my inability to contribute financially in any meaningful way. He didn't need a partner, he needed an audience. The air in the house grew thick with unspoken expectations, with the weight of his control. Our conversations became transactional. He'd discuss his day, his triumphs, his deals. My day, if I dared to mention it, was met with impatience or indifference. "That's nice, dear," he'd say, already scrolling on his phone, the dismissal a physical blow. He was building an empire, brick by brick, and I was merely part of the landscaping, maintained but ignored. The breaking point came during a stupid argument, the kind that spirals out of nowhere from exhaustion and resentment. I don't even remember what it was about, some minor disagreement over plans, but it escalated quickly, his voice rising, sharp and cutting. I pushed back, finally, a flicker of the old me asserting itself. I said something about wanting more, needing my own life, my own purpose. His face, usually so composed, twisted into something ugly. "Your own purpose? He scoffed, the sound dripping with contempt. What exactly is your purpose without me, Sarah? Let's be honest. You have nothing. No career, no savings, no way to support yourself. You think you can just walk away? You can't survive without me. You wouldn't last a week out there on your own. He leaned in, his eyes cold and hard. Admit it. You need me. The words hung in the air between us, heavy as lead. They weren't just angry words. They were a statement of fact, as he saw it. A truth he believed with every fiber of his being. And in that moment, looking at the smug certainty in his face, something inside me snapped. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, sharp realization. He didn't just think I was dependent. He wanted me to be. He needed my powerlessness to fuel his own sense of superiority. And he was right. As I stood there, tears blurring my vision, I knew he was right. I couldn't survive without him. Not then. That night, I lay awake, the words echoing in the dark. You can't survive without me. They were a brand on my soul. But as the initial shock and humiliation faded, a different feeling began to stir. A quiet, burning rage. Not the kind that makes you lash out wildly, but the kind that settles deep within, hardening into resolve. He thought he had trapped me. He thought he had defined my limits. He thought he knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. He was wrong. I didn't leave. Not yet. Leaving meant proving him right in the short term, facing the immediate, terrifying reality of building a life from scratch with nothing but my name. Instead, I stayed and I started planning. In secret. The rage became my fuel, his words the constant drumbeat driving me forward. I started small. Late nights after he was asleep, hunched over my laptop in the quiet study, illuminated only by the screen's glow. Researching. Reading. Learning. My background was in marketing years ago, before Mark had convinced me it was unnecessary fluff. I'd been good at it. Creative, strategic. The world had changed since then, evolved into digital landscapes I barely understood. I felt like a relic, digging through archives of forgotten skills. But the fire was lit. I remembered the thrill of building something, of seeing an idea take shape and connect with people. I decided to focus on digital marketing for small businesses. It was a field booming with opportunity, and more importantly, it was something I could start remotely, quietly, without needing a physical office or significant upfront investment that Mark would notice. My hobby, I'd call it if he asked. A little project to keep me busy. He'd likely chuckle, maybe pat me on the head patronizingly. Let him. His underestimation was my greatest weapon. The early days were a blur of exhaustion and anxiety. I juggled household duties, social obligations, and the immense task of teaching myself entirely new skill sets.
Online course, tutorial, forum.
My brain felt stretched thin, trying to absorb information while simultaneously performing the role of the perfect, dependent wife. Every time Mark made a dismissive comment about my screen time, or asked pointedly what I was wasting time on, the words "you can't survive without me" would flash behind my eyes, and I'd double down. Finding clients was the hardest part. I had no network, no portfolio. I started with free work for friends of friends, anyone who would give me a chance. Building case studies, learning to pitch. The rejections piled up. Emails went unanswered. Proposals were ignored. There were nights I sat at my desk, staring at a blank screen, the weight of his words crushing down on me. Was he right? Was I just deluding myself? Was I too far gone, too disconnected from the real world to ever make it on my own? He didn't notice the dark circles under my eyes, didn't notice the way I'd jump if he walked into the room while I was working. Or maybe he did, and just attributed it to some vague woman trouble or boredom. His world was so big, so important, that my small, secret struggle didn't register. He was too busy building his empire, securing his position, expanding his company. I landed my first paid client, a tiny local bakery, almost by accident. The fee was pathetic, barely enough to cover the cost of the software I needed, but it was real. Real money earned by me, for my work. I remember staring at the number in my bank account, a minuscule deposit compared to Mark's casual spending, but it felt like a fortune. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't useless, that I could create value, that his words were a lie. A powerful lie, but a lie nonetheless. Slowly, painstakingly, I built momentum. Referrals started trickling in. I honed my skills, found my niche. My confidence grew, tentative at first, then stronger. I wasn't just playing at this anymore. I was building a real business. I registered a company name, a generic LLC to avoid suspicion. Opened a separate business bank account, a secret vault storing the small but growing profits. Every dollar earned was a silent defiance, a brick in the foundation of my escape. Mark, meanwhile, continued his ascent. His company was thriving. He'd come home and boast about his latest deals, his major clients, the millions he was bringing in. And he'd still pepper his conversation with reminders of my dependence. "We need a new car, darling." "I'll handle it, of course. Don't you worry about the numbers," or watching me balance the household budget he gave me access to. "My poor girl, numbers aren't really your strong suit, are they? Don't stress your pretty head." Each comment, a tiny twist of the knife. But the knife no longer cut as deep. It hit something harder now, something like bone. One evening, he was on a call in his study, the door slightly ajar. I was passing by and heard him mention a client name. A big one. A national chain he'd been pursuing for months, a significant chunk of his company's revenue. Securing the Sterling account was the game changer, he said into the phone, his voice smug. It put us on the map. They're our anchor client now. Sterling. The name lodged in my brain. I knew their marketing was outdated, their digital presence almost non-existent for a company their size. A casual observation I'd made months ago, tucked away in my mind. But now, coupled with his words, it clicked. Sterling. His anchor client. The one that made him feel invincible. The one he was leveraging to attract even bigger fish. Later that night, I looked them up. Sterling Industries. Their website was ancient, their social media neglected. Their target demographic was shifting, and they were clearly failing to keep up. They weren't just outdated, they were vulnerable. A colossal ship listing in the water, waiting for someone to notice. An insane idea began to form. An impossible idea. My company, my tiny, fledgling digital marketing agency, targeting Sterling. It was absurd. They worked with established firms, giants in the industry. My little LLC was less than a blip on their radar. It was a fantasy born of exhaustion and simmering resentment. But the fantasy wouldn't let go. I started researching Sterling in earnest. Their market position, their competition, their recent struggles. The more I dug, the more I saw not an insurmountable fortress, but a company ripe for disruption in their marketing strategy. They needed a radical overhaul, a fresh perspective that the old guard firms wouldn't provide. My kind of perspective. Lean, agile, focused on modern digital channels. And the more I thought about it, the less impossible it seemed. Difficult?
Yes.
High risk? Absolutely. But impossible? Maybe not. The bigger the company, the slower they moved, the more entrenched they were in old ways of thinking. A small, nimble agency like mine could offer speed, innovation, and personalized attention that a corporate behemoth couldn't match. The real pull, though, wasn't just the business opportunity. It was the exquisite, terrifying symmetry of it. Taking his anchor, the client that made him feel secure, powerful, unassailable. The client that, in his mind, was part of the empire that funded my supposed inability to survive. It wasn't just about proving I could survive. It was about proving I could thrive on my own terms by taking something he valued more than anything else, his carefully constructed professional dominance. The idea transformed from a fantasy into an obsession. It consumed my thoughts. I started neglecting other clients, pouring all my limited time and energy into building a pitch for Sterling. It wasn't just a marketing proposal, it was a manifesto, a complete vision for their digital future, bold and disruptive. I analyzed their competitors, identified untapped markets, mapped out intricate social media campaigns and data-driven strategies. The pressure was immense. I was risking everything: my secret business, my financial stability, my emotional well-being. If Mark found out, if I failed, the fallout would be catastrophic. He'd use it as final, irrefutable proof of my incompetence, my foolishness. He'd bring it up forever, the time I tried to play in the big leagues and fell flat on my face. The thought was paralyzing. Self-doubt gnawed at me constantly.
Who was I kidding?
This was insane. Then came the setbacks. My laptop, old and overworked, crashed. I lost days of progress on the sterling proposal. Financial worries mounted. I needed new software, maybe even a virtual assistant to handle the administrative tasks that were eating at my time. My secret savings were dwindling faster than I anticipated. I considered taking out a small loan, but that felt too risky, too traceable. The walls seemed to be closing in. My focus on the sterling proposal meant I was letting other things slide. The house wasn't quite as perfect. Dinner parties were less frequent. Mark noticed. His casual comments turned sharper. You seem distracted lately. Everything all right? Or, did you forget to pay the gardener again? Honestly, darling, it's not that complicated. He was back to treating me like a scatterbrained child, incapable of handling simple tasks. It felt like a deliberate push to remind me of my perceived inadequacies. The tension between us became a palpable thing, thick and suffocating. He didn't know the real reason for my distraction, my exhaustion, but he sensed a shift. The compliant wife was slipping away, replaced by a woman with secrets in her eyes and a new, quiet determination that he couldn't decipher. He tried to reassert control, tightening the invisible reins, questioning my spending more, subtly suggesting I spend less time playing on the computer and more time focusing on us. One particularly brutal argument erupted when I declined to attend a last-minute work dinner with his colleagues. I had a crucial video call scheduled with a contact who might be able to get my proposal in front of the right people at Sterling. I couldn't explain that, so I just said I wasn't feeling well.
He didn't believe me.
His eyes narrowed. What's more important than supporting me, Sarah? Everything we have, everything you enjoy, comes from my work. The least you can do is show up when I need you. His words were a cold cascade, designed to extinguish any spark of independent will. They were a direct echo of his earlier pronouncement, a reinforcement of the power dynamic he so cherished. Everything you enjoy comes from my work. The sheer arrogance of it, the complete erasure of my effort, my struggle, myself, was breathtaking. In that moment, sitting across from him, feeling the familiar weight of his expectation and contempt, the doubt that had been plaguing me vanished. It was replaced by a hard, glittering resolve. There was no going back. I wouldn't just survive. I would dismantle the very foundation of his control. I would prove him wrong in the most undeniable way possible. Taking Sterling wasn't just a business goal anymore. It was a necessity. It was my declaration of independence, written in projected revenue and market share. I doubled down, fueled by that cold, hard certainty. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I refined the proposal, polishing every slide, anticipating every question. I practiced my pitch relentlessly, sometimes whispering it to the empty room late at night, my voice hoarse with fatigue and emotion. I leveraged every contact, every tiny connection I had made in my years of navigating social circles as Mark's wife, reframing them as professional opportunities. I finally secured a meeting with a mid-level executive at Sterling, a woman named Eleanor Vance, who was known for being forward-thinking but notoriously difficult to impress. Getting the meeting had been a minor miracle, requiring persistence, a compelling summary of my proposal sent through a back channel, and perhaps a bit of luck. This was my one shot. My entire future felt condensed into this single opportunity. The day of the meeting arrived. I remember feeling unnervingly calm. The frantic energy of the past months had settled into a quiet focus. I wore a simple, professional dress, nothing flashy, wanting the focus to be entirely on my work. I drove myself to the Sterling offices, a building that seemed to pierce the sky, a monument to the corporate world Mark inhabited. Walking through the lobby felt like stepping onto alien territory. Eleanor Vance was exactly as described, sharp, intelligent, and direct. She didn't waste time on small talk. She listened intently, her expression unreadable, as I walked her through my vision for Sterling's digital transformation. I spoke with a clarity and conviction I didn't know I possessed, drawing on months of intense research and the raw power of my motivation. I wasn't just selling a service. I was selling a future. I addressed their weaknesses head-on, not with criticism, but with solutions. I showed them how their competitors were outpacing them and presented a clear, actionable plan to not only catch up but surpass them. I spoke about connecting with a new generation of customers, about leveraging data to create personalized experiences, about building a vibrant online community. It wasn't just marketing. It was revitalizing their brand, ensuring their relevance in a rapidly changing world. When I finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Eleanor tapped a pen against her notepad, her eyes thoughtful.
It's
ambitious, she said finally, her voice low. Very different from the proposals we usually receive. Our current agency, she paused, and for the first time, a hint of something flickered in her eyes, perhaps dissatisfaction. They're comfortable, predictable. We discussed budget, timelines, metrics. She grilled me on implementation details, asking challenging questions that forced me to think on my feet. But I was prepared. I had anticipated most of her concerns, and for the ones I hadn't, I responded honestly and proposed collaborative solutions. The conversation flowed, not like an interrogation, but like a meeting of minds. She saw the passion, the strategic depth, the genuine belief I had in my plan. The meeting ran over its allotted time. As I gathered my materials, Eleanor stood and extended her hand. Thank you for coming in, Sarah. You've given us a lot to think about. We'll be in touch. It was non-committal, standard corporate speak, but there was a warmth in her handshake, a genuine spark of interest in her eyes that gave me a fragile thread of hope. The waiting began. The days stretched into an agonizing blur of checking my email every 5 minutes, jumping at every phone notification. Mark barely registered my anxiety. He was consumed with his own big deal, some merger he was working on. Life at home felt increasingly distant, like watching a play I was no longer a part of. My reality was the potential yes or no hanging over my head, the contract that could change everything. Then an email arrived. Subject line, Sterling Industries. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stared at it for a full minute before I could bring myself to open it. It was from Eleanor Vance. The words swam on the screen at first. I had to read them again, slowly, letting them sink in. They were impressed. Very impressed. My proposal was exactly what they needed. They wanted to move forward. They were awarding my company, my tiny, secretly built company, the contract for their complete digital marketing overhaul. It was massive. More than I had ever dared to dream. It wasn't just Sterling. It was the whole account, taking over from their incumbent agency. Mark's agency. I don't know how long I sat there, the words blurring, the magnitude of what had just happened washing over me. Displacing his agency. Winning his anchor client. His game changer. The proof that he didn't just provide for me, but that I could compete in his world, at the highest level, and win. Win big. The emotion wasn't triumph, not immediately. It was shock. A profound, disorienting shock. Followed by a wave of cold calm. The kind you feel after the crisis is past, the danger averted, and all that's left is the quiet aftermath. I had done it. Against the odds, against his expectations, against my own deepest fears. I signed the contract the next day. It was official, binding. Sterling Industries was now a client of my company. The first invoice would be substantial. Enough on its own to secure my financial independence for years. More than enough to prove Mark wrong 1,000 times over. I drove home that evening, the signed contract lying on the passenger seat like a silent passenger. The house was quiet when I entered. Mark wasn't home yet. He was at a business function, probably holding court, charming clients, secure in his world. I walked through the rooms he paid for, the rooms that had felt like my prison. They looked different now. The expensive furniture, the artwork, the manicured perfection. It all felt hollow. like a stage set for a play that had just ended. He arrived later, buoyant and talkative from the event. He didn't notice my quietness, my distant gaze. He poured himself a drink, loosened his tie, and started recounting anecdotes from his evening. Sterling CO was there, he said, swirling the ice in his glass. Had a good chat. They're expanding, doing well. Solid partnership, he smiled, a self-satisfied smile. That account is the backbone of our growth right now. Couldn't have done it without Sterling. He paused, took a sip, and finally looked at me, a casual glance. You're very quiet tonight, Sarah. Long day. This was it. The moment. The climax I had worked towards, sacrificed for, dreamed of in my darkest hours. It wasn't going to be a shouted confrontation, a dramatic unveiling. It was going to be quiet, precise, like surgical steel. I walked over my bag, retrieved the contract, the crisp, official pages. I didn't say a word. I just walked back to where he was standing, holding the paper out to him. He looked at the document in my hand, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He took it, his brow furrowing slightly. He glanced at the cover page, then flipped it open, his eyes scanning the key details. The names. My company's name. Sterling Industries. The nature of the agreement. The effective date. His face went pale. The color drained away as if pulled by some invisible force. His eyes widened, fixed on the page but not reading, just staring. His hand trembled slightly, the glass in his other hand forgotten. He looked up at me, his eyes searching my face, looking for an explanation, a trick, a joke. But there was nothing there but a quiet, unwavering gaze.
What?
What is this? He whispered, the buoyancy completely gone from his voice. It was flat, disbelieving. I didn't raise my voice. I kept it low, steady. It's the contract, Mark. Sterling Industries has signed with my company for their digital marketing. Effective immediately. It's a full transition from their current provider. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. His eyes darted back to the contract, then back to me. The confusion morphed into disbelief, then shock, then something akin to terror. He couldn't process it. His mind, so sharp and calculating in his world, simply froze. His anchor client. My company. It didn't compute. He stammered, finally finding his voice, though it was thin and reedy.
Your
company? What are you talking about? You don't have a company.
This
must be a mistake. A different Sterling? No mistake, Mark, I said softly. The Sterling. Your Sterling. The one you just said was the backbone of your growth. I watched him, a detached observer. There was no joy in his panic, only a cold, clinical satisfaction. The man who had belittled me, controlled me, told me I couldn't survive, was watching his world tilt on its axis, brought low by the person he had deemed powerless. He dropped the contract. It fluttered to the floor between us. The glass slipped from his other hand, shattering on the hardwood, scattering ice and liquid like crystal tears. He didn't even notice. He just stood there, rooted to the spot, staring at me, his face a mask of absolute devastation. You did this, he breathed, the accusation heavy, as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. I did, I confirmed. I built a business. While you were busy telling me I couldn't survive without you, I built something real, something successful, and I won their business, fair and square. He stumbled backward, bumping into the coffee table, sending a stack of magazines skittering across the floor. He looked lost, adrift. The confident, arrogant man I had lived with for years was gone, replaced by a bewildered, broken shell. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the refrigerator and the tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall, marking time that had just fundamentally shifted. He started pacing, agitated, running a hand through his hair. But how?
How could you?
Why would you? His questions were disjointed, born of pure shock. He wasn't asking for answers. He was railing against reality. That account. It's everything. This will cripple us. That's a consequence of not recognizing the competition, I said, my voice still calm, almost conversational. Or perhaps underestimating it. He stopped pacing and looked at me again, his eyes blazing now, not with arrogance, but with raw fury. You planned this. You did this deliberately. You told me I couldn't survive without you. I said, the words simple, factual. I believed you for a long time. It felt true. You built a world where I was dependent. But your words, they didn't break me, Mark. They freed me. They showed me what I had to do. He stared at me, his chest heaving. He didn't see the woman he thought he knew. He saw a stranger, cold and unyielding. He saw the architect of his downfall. The irony, the poetic justice, was almost unbearable. The dependent wife, the one who couldn't manage simple numbers, had just executed a strategic move that devastated his professional life. You're leaving, aren't you? He said finally, the fury draining away, leaving behind a bleak certainty. Yes, Mark, I said. I'm leaving. I can survive without you now. More than survive. I didn't wait for his response. There was nothing left to say. The conversation, the marriage, the entire life we had built, it had all culminated in this single, devastating revelation. I walked past him, leaving him standing among the shards of glass and scattered paper, a monument to his shattered arrogance. I went to the study, the room where I had spent countless secret hours building my escape. I grabbed a duffel bag and began to pack. Not clothes or personal items, just the essentials. My laptop, a few notebooks, the signed sterling contract, the printouts of my business financials. The evidence of my survival. Walking out of the front door felt surreal. The night air was cool and fresh against my skin. I carried my bag, the weight of it comforting, substantial. It wasn't just a bag of belongings. It was the weight of my independence, the tangible proof of my transformation. I got into my own car, the one I had bought with my own money, piece by careful piece, saved from my secret earnings. Driving away, I didn't look back. There were no tears, no moments of regret. Just a vast, quiet emptiness where the tension used to be, replaced by a fragile sense of freedom. The house, lights still on, receded in my rearview mirror, shrinking until it was just another house on a tree-lined street. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of building my business, onboarding the Sterling account, and setting up my new life. The divorce proceedings were messy, as expected. Mark was furious, vengeful. But he couldn't deny the facts, couldn't deny the contract. His professional world took a significant hit, just as I knew it would. While I felt no pity, there was a lingering sadness, a sense of the years lost, the person I had been, the person he had tried to erase. I don't live in a mansion anymore. My apartment is smaller, simpler. But it is mine. Every piece of furniture, every bill paid, every success earned is entirely my own doing. There are no invisible strings, no patronizing comments, no whispers of inadequacy. The Sterling account was a success. My team, yes, I have a team now, delivered exceptional results, and my company grew rapidly on the back of that initial victory. I proved not only that I could survive, but that I could thrive. That the skills and intelligence he dismissed as hobbies were powerful tools capable of reshaping markets. His words, "You can't survive without me," used to haunt me. Now, they are a distant echo, a faded scar that reminds me of the darkness I escaped. They are a testament not to my weakness, but to the strength I found when pushed to the absolute limit. He thought he had grounded me, clipped my wings. Instead, he gave me the sky. The ultimate irony is that his cruelty was the catalyst for my liberation, his arrogance the architect of my triumph. Life isn't a fairy tale. There's no perfect, happily ever after. There are still challenges, sleepless nights, moments of doubt. But they are my challenges, my nights, my doubts. And I faced them standing on my own 2 feet, beholden to no one. I survived. I didn't just survive. I built an empire of my own, on the ashes of a certainty. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.